All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning in to the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So I keep getting messages and emails and texts and a bunch of different things regarding me not putting enough things regarding my program, Mastering Self-Confidence. It's a blueprint to try to help men find the woman or women of their dreams. I haven't been putting up a lot of podcasts regarding that subject. People keep asking me why, and I don't know why. I just do whatever I feel. So I'm going to start putting more of that information up. But if you do want to check out my program, not to plug the shit out of it here because I get pissed off with people who do that, but it is it's a program you can get online, masteringselfconfidence.com, and you can sign up for the program, and it has over 45 hours of audio that I try to help people. Nothing that you got to write in this program or anything like that. And you can listen to the program, and I have it set up where you can listen to whatever you want at the time you want to listen to it. There's a lot more besides just trying to help men date. It's got a lot of things regarding fitness, fashion, hygiene, grooming as well. But it's got tons of different things. Even if you're in a relationship, there's a lot of information on there. It can even help you in your relationship when it comes to many different things. But today what I want to get into is something I go into on my program in much detail, but I want to get into it here as well. And it's the difference is, well, I should say not the difference, but it's what I call like thinking you're in love when you're actually under a spell. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they're under a spell. They're actually not in love. Or they may be both. I'm not going to say they can't be both, but I'm just going to start from ground zero here. So a lot of men and women, I think, when starting a relationship especially, think that they're madly in love. But the truth is they may feel or think they're in love, but the truth is they're more under a spell is what I would call it. It could be something you're more attracted to this person physically, emotionally, whatever the case may be. But I think, there's a lot of different ways to look and describe the word love, right? I think a lot of times love is wanting the best for one another. It's also a form of respect for one another. And that doesn't mean that you have to put the other person before you. It doesn't mean that other person has to complete you. I don't necessarily believe in any of that nonsense because you're your own person. I have a theory the minute you realize that you don't need anyone to complete you is when you are. That's when you're your best self because you are who you are. You most likely are coming into this world alone. You're going to die alone. And a lot of times when it comes to relationships or meeting people, if you know people, they're always like, this is the one. I've been looking for this one my whole life. Then they break up or they end up in a divorce. Well, the next one they're with, this was the one. Okay, that doesn't work out. This is the one. In time, I believe, is when you truly figure out what love is with this person. And a lot of it has to do with their actions. So in my opinion, it takes time to kind of really prove that you love me and vice versa, right? Let me get some water here. So now the spell. Let me start with that a little bit too. A lot of men, I'm not going to speak for women because I'm not a woman, but a lot of men fall under a spell with women, especially with women that are extremely attractive or women that they think are out of their league or women that do a lot of things for them. It could be sexually. And wait a minute, if you start hearing rain, that's because it's raining outside. It's not bad audio, just a heads up. But yeah, so men all of a sudden, and I see this happen with all ages. I don't care if you're 16. I don't care if you're 80 years old. Men and women get taken advantage of all the time. Get taken advantage from people all the time, right? I don't care if you're even straight or gay. People get taken advantage of in relationships. And a lot of times, like I said, immediately when you think you fell in love, which again, you may be in love. I'm not going to sit here and dispute what you think love is. So don't get all huffy puffy or nuts on me. What I'm trying to say is a lot of times, though, you need to protect yourself when what I call under the spell. And what happens with a lot of men is they get taken advantage of. And they don't want to admit it. And then if things don't work out well, they still don't want to admit it. Or they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And a lot of men will be like, I don't care. I'm in love anyways. I'll let them do whatever they want to do to me. That's fine if that's the way you want to go about it. But I wouldn't think that's a good idea. But yes, if you look at a lot of guys, the last thing they would let is anybody pull one over on them, right? Most men, I can't say everybody, but men don't want to be taken advantage of. They don't want to be ripped off. If they go to get a car, a lot of times they want to get the best deal they can get. If they go get a loan, they want to get the best interest rate they can get. They only hang out with a certain amount of buddies that they trust, that they may have been with a long time, or maybe they have a lot of friends, but they're not going to let someone pull one over on them. If they do, they do, but most don't want to have that happen. But when it comes to women, they allow it. I don't know why they allow it, truthfully. I don't understand that perspective. And a lot of times there's all the signs there, and I don't know if it's because they're desperate, or when it comes to women, they allow it, because I think a lot of men do allow themselves to be taken advantage of. And I've seen this over the years, just even from a traditional sense of a lot of women used to do the bookkeeping or handle all the bills, and men would make the money. So the men would put a lot of women in charge of their, I can't say their finances, but yeah, a lot of their money. And they would get taken advantage of a lot of times. They would get, they'd get their money stolen from them. They get a divorce. They didn't realize they were doing embezzling money, or they were doing all these different types of things. Now, why would a man allow that? Would you let somebody you just met, right, all of a sudden come in, and I understand you're in a relationship with this person. You may even be married to this person, but people are always changing. But if you met somebody, would you let them be in charge of your finances? Think about that. Oh, because I fool around with this person. Basically, your friends that you have sex with, that's what a lot of relationships really are about, right? Or they're just friendships, or like anything else. I get into that in my program, but I'm not going to get into that here. But whoever you're with, you're basically, if you're married or in a relationship, that's basically, I guess, to a certain point, your best friend. You're supposed to trust that person more than anyone else, especially when it comes to a lot of things, raising children, your finances, all these different types of things. But even if you're not married and you're just in a regular relationship, or you first start dating, men fall under a spell where they allow a woman, and women do this with men as well. They let men kind of come in and kind of take over a lot of, their life, I guess you could say. And I don't know why they allow that to happen. Again, I don't know if it's insecurity. And I see this happen with a lot of men as they get older as well. They let another woman into their life and say, they could be, their wife could have passed away, or they've gotten a divorce. Then somebody else comes into play, and now they kind of leave this woman who was really kind of new, even if they get married, and all of a sudden they're in charge of their financing, or if something happens to them. And it's their right. If they pass away, they leave kind of everything to them, or a large sum of money to them. Whatever the case may be, they kind of finagle their way into there. And again, the man can do whatever he wants. But men and women, you have to protect yourself. That's the number one thing I talk about in my program, is actually, or one of them, is you have to learn how to protect yourself, because a lot of times people aren't who you think they are, especially behind closed doors, right? They may be all lovey-dovey to you, right? But when the shit hits the fan a lot of times, or things change, which they always are, they may not always have your best interests. And also, they may be interested in somebody else. It could be another man or another woman, where now they use you or your possessions or things that you have for their pleasure with somebody else, right? That's kind of, but let's not even get into that deep. But you're kind of seeing the point I'm trying to make. Just because you're in love, or you think you're in love, or whatever situation you're in, do not fall under a spell. That's really where somebody else in the relationship, I can't say dominates, but somebody who kind of manipulates you, right? Because a lot of times you think somebody else is in love with you, or you're in love, you may love you as much as you love them. That's not always the case, even though they may pretend to be, because there's a lot of motives behind a lot of people why they get into relationships, and people don't want to be honest about that. It could be even financially, and some men know this. If they're wealthy and they're with somebody that isn't that wealthy, they kind of get it, right? They're like, yeah, and even the woman would be like, oh, I never had all these things, now I have them with you. That's wonderful. And it goes both ways. Men and women can end up in those situations. But a lot of times you really got to realize you're being used as well sometimes. There's a difference between someone respecting your wealth, or even if it's not wealth, it's just you opening yourself to helping them out as much as possible. I kind of talk about my program when you first start dating a woman. The last thing you want to do is actually start throwing wealth around. Now, if you're you could do whatever you want to do. But if you're not wealthy, is what I should say, then don't pretend you're wealthy, or don't start blowing a lot of money that you can't afford to blow. Don't put yourself in debt. And a lot of times I know women need things and you like to get those things for them. But if you can't afford it, just be honest about it, right? Again, don't start charging everything or start doing things illegal or embezzling to impress this woman. If you got to do that shit, it's never most likely going to work out to your favor, I think. And you really got to be honest and genuine with yourself. And if you're going to help somebody else out, and I talk about even if you're dating somebody and, figure out who they are. And then if they have bad credit, help them clean up their credit so that they could get their own car. I wouldn't be co-signing for a car. I met this girl. I've been dating her a while. Because if it doesn't work out, I'm stuck with the car payment. And that's same with like kind of a lease sometimes. You go sign a lease with a woman and she has bad credit. So you sign for the full amount and then she cheats or she leaves you. Say it doesn't work out. Now you're the only one on the lease. She can leave. Now you're stuck again. Do not burn yourself. And don't think just because you think you're in love, which you may be in love. But if you are in love, respect is still something you need from both of you. That doesn't mean that anyone should set themselves up to be taken advantage of. And here's the thing. I hope women listening to this don't think I'm necessarily pinpointing this on women. That's absolutely not the case at all. Men and women. The truth is, a lot of time, men and women will kind of zero in on certain type of people that they want to get certain things from. And I hope you know that. And that goes, again, for men and women. They can, for instance, kind of go after a certain type of man, or a man can go after a woman that has certain things that they want. So a lot of times they may not be in love with the person. They may be in love with what their possessions are, or even their contacts, connections, things in that nature. So if one, say, for instance, is more financially wealthier than the other, and they get in a relationship with them, a lot of times don't think that that person necessarily loves you as much as you think. They just may love your lifestyle. They may fall in love with the home you live in. They may fall in love with the car you drive. They may fall in love with your, depending on how wealthy you are, just your possessions in general, or what you can give them. So they love that you keep giving them things. That doesn't necessarily mean they genuinely love you. And I think a lot of people, when they get into relationships, they forget about all these things. Back to the spell, they think that this person loves them because they're having an exciting time with them. And again, I've seen this throughout my entire life, and especially with men that like to go to strip clubs or hang out in nightclubs. A lot of beautiful women I knew would just literally use them up for drugs, for a party lifestyle, and then kind of throw them away. And I think sometimes that is the same environment. Just take out drugs and alcohol, but a lot of women and men do this to other women, just whatever situation they're in. And you really got to learn to protect yourself. And I mean that wholeheartedly, because like I said, I think to truly figure out if someone does love you, you have to go through good and bad times. When your backs are against the wall, that's really where you learn, I think, a lot of times, what type of person you're dating and what type of person you are in a relationship. When the good times are good, everything is lovey-dovey, I call it. Everything is fun. When you meet somebody, it's the honeymoon phase a lot of times too, right? Especially if you have some money, or even if you're just first starting off, it's all fun. All we're doing is we're dating, we're screwing around. If you're in a Florida lifestyle, for instance, you're going to pools, you're going to beaches, or if you're California too a little bit. I don't even care if you're in Chicago. Chicago would be, because that's where I'm from as well, the Midwest or East Coast. You're going to different dinners, you're having fun, you're meeting different people. And that's all fun, you know what I mean? And it's all fun. And a lot of fun is fun, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're in love. And also, when it's very hard, I think, for men, I can't speak for women, when they're with somebody to pull out, especially if they haven't dated many women, or they don't know how to date or meet a lot of women. So they end up in situations where they don't want to end a relationship even they know it's horrific, or even when they know they're being used. Because I think they'd almost rather have an identity of being with somebody than not being with anyone at all. And I think women fall into that trap as well. I'd hate to say it, especially as they get older sometimes. I'm not saying they'll take... I have a theory a lot of times, or a saying that says, a lot of men like who likes them, which is kind of sad to a certain degree. But if a woman takes an interest in you, you'll just kind of take them. You won't really take your time to figure out who that person is, because you're just like, oh wait, she likes me? Or you'll hear from somebody else, oh, you want to fix me up with her? And again, if that's rain in the backdrop, sorry, it's getting a little loud off and on. But you've got to understand there's a lot of women out there, and there's a lot of good women, but there's a lot of fucking assholes out there. There's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of people that want to take from you, use you. I don't care how good you think they are. I don't care how wealthy you may think they are, how smart they are, all these different types of things. Don't fall for it. There's a lot of shit people out there, and you may be shitty yourself, and I think a lot of times we've all done things that we may regret. But from the core of it, you kind of know who's good and bad. And, too, you got to realize when things end in a relationship, or you always want to end it on a good note regardless how bad the situation was. But if you get taken advantage of, and you get burned, and now you're claiming to be a victim, now that's on you. Right? Now, there's a difference between thinking you're in a healthy relationship and someone's cheating on you, or then you're married and someone embezzles all your money and shit like that. I get it. But again, you need to, a lot of times I should say, you knew this person was kind of a piece of shit to begin with. You knew where it was heading. Now, some do get blindsided. Hold on, let me get some water here. But I think for the most part, a lot of us, again, know who we're dating. But again, under the spell, we want to either think we're going to change them, or they would never really do that to me, or, they can't accept the reality of the situation anymore, if that makes sense. And you can't fall for that. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Don't sell yourself short under any situation. Do not stay under that stupid-ass spell. Right? And there's a difference between love and respecting each other, even when you get a divorce or when you're in a relationship, to say, and being honest, to say, you know what, I don't like the way you do this, or I don't think this is working out, or I think we need some time away from one another, or I'm not comfortable in this situation. Again, it's fear-driven, and I think either people are afraid to get into an argument when confronting somebody, or they're afraid the person's going to leave them, when the truth is they probably should let them leave. But again, you don't have the balls to leave, and then you don't have, you almost want to stay in a loop, I call it, where the same things keep happening over and over again, which are making you miserable. But again, you still think you're in love and you're under this spell where before you know it, it just ends up horrific for you. And a lot of times ends up better for them. How does that happen? Because a lot of times you let yourself take advantage. Let yourself get taken advantage of when you didn't have to. And again, I can only speak for men because I'm not a woman, but I think a lot of men, again, they get very insecure when things are going bad in a relationship, especially with someone that they're in love with or if they're under a spell with, because I think it's an ego thing where if a woman cheats on you hypothetically or leaves you, or it's almost like a lot of men I've seen over the years would almost be at the point where they're okay being financially taken advantage of, but they would rather have them do that than cheat on them, just saying, which is kind of interesting because losing all your money or somebody putting you in a horrific financial situation, you would think would be way worse because that's going to have a much longer lasting effect. And the truth is, say you did someone cheated on you, probably only your close friends are going to find that out. It's not like the whole world's going to find out. No one gives a shit. Then in your next relationship, when you're in another relationship, say hypothetically, then that one really didn't mean that much. But a lot of men, back to the spell, will be nervous, and I think they're scared. And they also, if they have, when women break up with them or a relationship keeps going bad or they keep getting married and divorced, they start to get embarrassed. And nothing's worse, I think, than kind of being embarrassed, right? After a while, I mean, it's a tough one, but I really should have went more in depth in my program. That's one of the things I was thinking of is a lot of men, I do talk about this subject, when they get embarrassed, they start doing things that they normally wouldn't do, reacting a certain way, obviously getting very angry. Some men flip out. That's where physical abuse can come in, murder, all these type of things. And I think a lot of that is because they were taken advantage of, they were embarrassed, or they just didn't know how to handle it anymore, which is understandable at times. But don't let anybody control your your emotions to the level where it makes you crazy, or try to control that. And again, what I think happens back to the spell is when they kind of break out of the spell and they're like, oh my God, why did I let someone do this to me? Or why did I let them do this to me and my children or my family? Or what was I thinking? When you're in a relationship, think clearly. Don't be cluttered by a lot of bullshit and stop lying to yourself. Because again, when you're under that spell, a lot of times you just keep lying and thinking, again, it's going to get better. They're not going to do this, or we're going to work it out, or what, all these things but you just keep letting it go on and on and on. You got to put the brakes on and say, wait a minute here. Okay, I do love this person, right? But if I love this person, do they love me in return? And if they did, would they be doing the things they're doing? Usually not. And that doesn't mean that a lot of people do bad things to people that are in love with them. I'm not going to say they don't, because, people get hurt all the time. I think a lot of people have different types of love. But they may love you as a person, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to take advantage of you. Because again, they may love something else more than even the relationship that you have to offer. Okay? You got to think about that in levels sometimes. I know that's kind of weird, but like I just told you earlier, they may love who knows what they love? They may love the identity that you bring. So you may be somebody, I call it a spotlight position, or say you're a bartender, or you're a rock and roll star, or an actor. Girls may date you, right? Because you kind of take them to parties, or you may be slightly famous, or you have a great personality, or whatever. They may love you, but they love what you bring as far as the other attention that they get from you. And those are all things you got to really think about. Because regardless who you are, if you're the wealthiest guy in the world or the poorest, again, you want to make sure that you're in a relationship with somebody that truly, genuinely respects you on every level. And a lot of times, people know what the other person expects of them, but they let somebody kind of disrespect them and they keep letting them get away with it. What would you expect to happen? And again, that goes back to the spell. You let somebody continuously hurt you, but you stayed in a relationship, or you let them do these things. Now, if you're lashing out and you're doing that back, if somebody's doing something to you and then you got to lash out back at them, basically you're just a rebound situation. Why even go through all that, right? It's like tit for tat. And if you don't like arguing, learn to have real life discussions. You don't always have to argue, and you don't always have to, prove your point in those situations. There's a lot of different ways to go about either breaking up or just confronting somebody, right? So you got to really think about all those things. So I'm going to wrap it up there, but just try to think about that in your own relationships, or if you're about to get in one. There's a big difference. Hopefully I don't ruin things for you, but when you're meeting someone and going, wait a minute, am I under a spell, or am I truly, am I in love with this person? And do they truly love me? And let's not get ridiculous. Sometimes people love you more than you're going to love them. You may find somebody who's a lot more romantic. In my case, I'm like that. I'm not that romantic, but the one I'm with is very romantic. And she knows that I'm not, but she knows that I'm not going to diss on her being romantic or like shun her or anything. But think about, again, when you start a relationship, you really want to set a standard. Because a lot of times I think what happens at the beginning of a relationship, you let a lot of things fly on both ends, men and women. Like, oh, that's no big deal. That's no big deal. Which a lot of things I overlook almost a majority of it. But I'm also not going to put myself in a position where, maybe because I'm middle-aged, where somebody's going to fuck me over. Like, really. And if they do, it's on them. So hypothetically, if something went bad in my relationship, I understand. This is another phase of my life that I have to deal with. And again, I can't always be the victim. I'm sure in a lot of relationships, people don't understand that their actions makes a lot of other people react a certain way. So you can't pretend to be something and then expect somebody else to always be 100% down with who you are, what you do, and all those things. So you got to be patient too. So think about those things. But so anyways, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you want to learn more about this stuff, again, it's in my Mastering Self-Confidence program. That's masteringselfconfidence.com. You can also see other stuff with just my website, richcelenza.com. And I have a YouTube channel out. I kind of get into things like this as well. And what else do we got? We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as well. What else? I think that's really about it. And obviously I have this podcast. If you want, please leave comments. So besides just all the other, iTunes and all those places that you can listen to my podcast. I also post it on my social media websites if you want to leave comments or like it or dislike it. Yeah, because I'm always willing to learn. I don't think everything I say, too, is right all the time. I'm a flip-flopper. Sometimes I believe something, and then later I'll be like, I was wrong about that. But I was right about this. Or a lot of what I say, too, is only things that I went through in my life that I've seen. So I don't live anybody else's life but my own, obviously. So a lot of my opinions are just related to what I've been through. And so I hope I don't offend anybody, because sometimes I think I could be harsh. And when I don't want to categorize everybody like men and women. Men are this way, women are this way. This is that, and this is, the way it is. That's ridiculous. Everybody's their own person. Everybody lives a different lifestyle. Everybody's in a different relationship. What I'm talking about a lot of times is on a whole, I think, regarding the spell and love. Obviously, there's so many different ways of showing love, different levels of love. But when I describe things, I kind of just want to categorize them where they're simple for you to understand and where it's kind of fluent. So I just use the word spell, which you may be like, that's ridiculous. Nobody falls under a spell. But I do believe they do. So that's one thing I will say. And so anyways, I'm going to wrap it up there. I wish you nothing but the best. And if you're traveling, safe travels.